AAT Birds Weekly Report is the Eagle news, notes, and analysis you need.
Go back. He looks, fires for the end zone. Intercepted. The 20, the 10, the 5. Touchdown. Matt Ware. Midfield. He's going to go. Deshaun Jackson. He steps up his head and falls forward. And he fumbles the football and the Eagles have it. It's gone. And the Eagles win.
It's all birds. All the time.
And welcome to another edition of the AAT Birds Weekly Report. I myself, Johnny Ulecka, is joined as always by Chip at Chip for the Birds. Eagles have begun the OTAs, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. Begin, yeah. We were having a little issue with the title that we wanted to have here. That's the kind of stuff that we do in the green room, and a couple other things that I do want to get into a little bit later in the show. But the Eagles started OTAs. They're working out. Their team is together. There are a couple that are missing, a couple notables, which, we'll get into with that. But how is it to see some Eagles football on the practice field and not rookies practicing, the team actually practicing?
I think that it's going to be really nice to see this team come together, because the way that last season ended, there was a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. And, we've talked about this already. Howie has spent the entire offseason strengthening this roster and filling holes and locking down players for the long term. And this is now the core of a team that is going to do things together. And this is just the first step of it.
Yeah, it's fun to watch because, of course, they're not in pads. It's not, they're not hitting each other. It's nothing like that. But you get to see some of these guys. Like you also saw, I think it was the weekend, you saw a picture of Jordan Davis all slimmed down. And
it looks good.
It looks a lot better than he did towards the end of last year. Hopefully that discipline and everything will keep going as the season goes on, because he started off really, really well and then kind of faded a little bit. And you need him to take a jump. We've talked about that, but
I think you see that in these rookies anyway, because we know the college football season is shorter than the NFL season. And I obviously know Jordan Davis is not a first year player, but I think that drop off is reasonable. You start to see it now. Hopefully he is ready to go kind of for the long term. But you also, again, we have two new coordinators. Like, let's get in there and start learning the system together. Yeah. Let's have these guys come together and ready to go.
Yeah, and listen, when you look at Jordan Davis and his position, nose tackles and what he is asked to do, it takes time to develop at the NFL level. So sure. you can't be – and I think people need to stop with the, oh, well, he's not sacking the quarterback 8-9 times. That's not his role. His role is
getting pressure.
And plug the middle, let the guys behind you get into the open holes that you create by taking on double teams and vice versa, stuff like that. So that's what he's for. But you're right. And I think one thing that's fun to watch in this is seeing some of the reps, seeing who is getting some first team reps, who's getting, starting reps here, who's maybe getting a backup. Like Avonte Maddox is the third team safety reps. There's Paris Campbell in the slot to start. You have Joseph Ngata. Now, Joseph Ngata, because of course Devontae Parker did announce his retirement, the free agent signing from the New England Patriots. So he did announce it. 31-year-old did announce his retirement. So hey, it is what it is. We'll see what the Eagles go from there, whether or not they want to add a veteran or do they want to see what they have in camp. We, of course, will see that. But I
think the one thing that you said is, you're starting to see, who's getting first team reps and things like that. I promise you, I am not studying the depth chart in depth right now. It is way too early, and guys really need to learn. And there's nothing tied to these coordinators. Like there's a lot of football still to be played here.
Swoop Boys has a good question here. Did anyone think Parker was making the team? Now,
I did.
For me, I think when you look at the depth of the receiving core and what they had, I think Paris Campbell had a leg up because he knew Sirianni. They were interested in him back when they drafted J-Jaw. So there was interest to start there. I know he's been injured. I know he hasn't played up to his potential. He is more of a slot receiver along the lines of that. Now, you did draft Anaya Smith, and of course you have Johnny Wilson, and then you have a couple other guys. I think it was more than likely that if he were to stick, there would have been an injury, in my opinion, just because he doesn't really play special teams. So it was
not a special teams player,
and he didn't have a lot of guarantee money. So him retiring, unfortunately, it is what it is. But we get to see these other guys.
That could have also been in regards to a conversation that somebody had with him, like, hey, now that we're getting some of these players in and we're getting a little closer looks at them, it doesn't seem likely that you're gonna.
He's also been really banged up the last couple of years.
Yeah. So he's like, is it really like now that you're getting your way through this, is this something that you really want to do? So I think it could have been a joint conversation.
Plus, he's still getting paid from New England. New England still has to pay him because he's still guaranteed money on his deal with them when they cut him. So it's the reason he signed a veteran minimum with the Eagles, because he was getting paid a few $1 million, I believe, from New England. So, yeah. And, Swoop Boys brings this up because this was our next thing that we were going to talk about was, you're taking a look at a guy like Bradbury. Bradbury was absent. Now it is voluntary. It isn't mandatory. So he doesn't have to be there, but everybody else
is there on the same page with a winning mindset.
There was a couple other guys that weren't there, but again, it is voluntary. But Bradbury, Slay was there. You had a number of other veterans that are there, and Bradbury was absent. Now, we'll see where this goes because, of course, there's money tied to him. There's guaranteed money tied to him. What they do, whether it's after June 1st, which basically is the end of next week. So that's coming quick. So we'll see what they do with Bradbury. To me, it's just with what they did in the draft and who they have, and they signed a few free agents. Yeah. And I don't see where there's a fit for him. Maybe there's a bad contract for a bad contract type of trade, gets some, I don't know, or if it's just an outright release after June 1st or whatever it may be to kind of, you got to eat a little bit of money, but they have enough cap space to be able to eat. I think it's $4 million that you would eat after June 1st. You don't get any relief. You just basically pay $4.3 million off the cap, basically. Gets
right. And, again, Swoop Boys has another really good comment here. He's basically saying, like, and this is what I was kind of alluding to, is you've got a team right now. And yes, I know that it is technically voluntary. But winning teams are going to show up. That's kind of what it comes down to. Winning teams that work together in May and June, and they lift together and they do all the things that they're supposed to do all off season, work together come November and December and playoff times. It's just that simple. And James Bradbury, I think that he is, as you were mentioning, a cap reason why he's still on this team. But I think that's the only reason. I'm going to be really honest.
Yeah. So some of the players that weren't there, just so everybody wasn't sure.
Just throw James Bradbury down.
Yeah. Josh Sweat, Devontae Smith, Lane Johnson, Keely Ringo. Those were the guys who weren't there in attendance. But again, like I said, it is voluntary, so they don't have to be there. When the
be a lot cooler if they were.
Yeah, no, it definitely would be. But this gives some opportunity for some of the guys who are on the bottom end of the roster. Let them get some looks. Maybe it's something that they can work their way onto the practice squad. It's stuff like that, and give themselves an opportunity. Now, again, they're playing in shorts and shirts, and we'll see what that is. But what was interesting, though, Chip, was when you take a look at the first team defense, no Nakobe Dean. I guess he is still on the mend from his Liz Frank. So we'll see with that. Devin White, who listed at 237 pounds, which is something to keep an eye on. A little bit bigger than what he weighed at in Tampa. and Zach Bond were the two inside backers to start in the
Cool.
7-on-7 drills. So that's pretty interesting because Zach Bond, we thought, going to come over, be a special teamer, going to be on the outside, maybe get some pass rush looks, everything with that. And now Vic Fangio did mention him in his opening press conference when he talked with reporters that they were going to give him a look inside. And that's pretty interesting that he got the first run with Devin White. Again, It's very early, but this is fun to kind of see because this kind of gives you what the coaches initially think of these guys, where they put them out. Because I did also see that Isaiah Rodgers did get some outside reps starting basically with Slay on the outside there. And then, of course, the rookies were back behind them. And, that was interesting. Of course, Britton Covey, Cooper DeJean,
the other thing that
return
you're going to
duties.
see, the other thing that you see by this is, we know that football is a very long season. So when these injuries do start to pile up, you're starting to see guys in different packages and different groupings and seeing how they feed off each other and how they work together. So it just gives you kind of a more full picture as the season goes on for what some potential options could be.
Yeah, no, it definitely is something. And I think the one thing that I want to see is, now I know the running back room with Saquon and Kenny Gainwell, those are your two guys. Of course, they drafted rookie Will Shipley, but I kind of want to see some of these guys, Ty Davis Price. I want to see Kendall Milton. I really want to see Lou Nichols. He came out.
That's what the preseason's for.
Exactly. I want to see some of these guys play. I enjoy that. I want to see if they have anybody that is a developmental talent that they can maybe work into a role, or maybe they can work into a practice squad. But I think what's really going to be interesting is for how deep they are in the secondary, they're going to have to get rid of some talented players. Now, this is not including James Bradbury, but you're looking at some players like Josh Jobe was an alternate Pro Bowler gunner. He's a heck of a special teams player, one of the best special teams players on the team. There just may not be a spot for him. When you look at everybody, when you look at all those special teamers that you have, or all those corners you have on the roster in the secondary, and what you have,
it's a tough problem to have.
No, it's a great problem because listen, we've been through the ringer in terms of all these different type of corners that we've had on the roster, these free agent signings, these draft picks, some of these just not living up to the hype of what we thought they were going to be. It's been years and years and years. And I think Slay gets, a lot of people don't like him. I don't know if it's the way he interviews. I'm not sure what it is, the giveaways he does. I don't know, but he's been one of the best corners that they've had probably since Asante.
Yeah.
If you take a look at what he has done in his time in Philly since he was traded for in 2020.
Well, and I think that, you mentioned having the plethora of corners. If there's one GM that I now trust to maximize that, I mean, Howie is going to construct this roster and then trade anybody away for any asset that he can.
It's funny because that's come absolutely, hasn't it come a long way?
Again, I remember doing shows where we were talking about getting his ass fired.
Yeah.
And now I trust him explicitly.
Yeah, it's just funny how it's evolved. And of course, people get better with their jobs, and we know that. But he's really stepped his game up.
He was really bad, though. And I think a lot of that was what he was being told to do. It was what he was being told to do.
They made some mistakes. They try to duplicate what other teams were doing instead of going by their board and going all the best player off their board, trying to go for a guy for speed, trying to go for a guy with size, instead of actually looking at the board and seeing what's best out there and picking them up. Look, they drafted back-to-back years of defensive tackles. When you had Fletcher Cox on the roster, you had Milton Williams there, and they drafted two different because they were the best players on the board, and they went that route, and they went and they got the best linebacker that was on their board in the third round who had slipped in Nakobe Dean. And they've done these. Devontae Smith, the best receiver, they've done that. I think he's righted his wrongs basically when you look at that and you look at the OTAs and you look at this roster and the way it's been built, and you have a lot of youth now. And that's one thing that we've seen the last couple of years is there would be an injury here and let's pluck this guy, this veteran free agent. Let's get this veteran free agent. Let's get this veteran guy. And it's like, unfortunately, that only lasts for so long. And you take a look at the roster right now.
Yeah.
Yes, you lose Kelsey. Yes, you lose Cox, 2 veterans. You knew they were going to be gone sooner rather than later. And, Kelsey was basically every single year, was he staying or going the last, 4 or 5 years? So you now have to turn the page, but you have youth. You have a Cam Jurgens who's young, who's sat behind him for a couple of years. You have the 2 corners you drafted in Cooper DeJean, and you have Quinyon Mitchell. All this youth that you have, Sidney Brown you drafted, Reed Blankenship is back there. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, yes, he's a veteran, but he's 26?
Yeah.
So and then the offensive line, it's fun to watch because your core on offense is still young. Hurts is 25. You have, Saquon's young, AJ's young, Devontae's young. Dallas is the oldest. He's 29. But the core of this team and what you have is, I don't know. I feel basically almost like it's a rejuvenation in terms of the way, like you said, the way the season ended last year to then we get to this point, because the last 2 off seasons, it ended terribly. One with the Super Bowl loss, unfortunately. And then this one where they total collapse, where the bottom fell out from under them. You go into this off season, you feel
with a very clear, this is what we're doing.
Yeah. But you feel good because of the youth that is there and the building blocks that you think that you have for the future that they needed to do. And they needed to do this because only veterans will get you so long if you don't start getting younger and getting younger creatively, which I think they did.
And the other thing with that is, I think about 2 teams in particular. I think about the quote unquote dream team that was created, and it was, let's add these high priced big name veterans to fill all these spots. And it clearly didn't work. And then the other thing is, I think about the way that the Washington Redskins built their roster for so many years. And it was, let's bring all these big name free agents in. And when they're all together, they have to play well together. That's just not the way that football works. Like, yes, you obviously need the talent, but you also need that talent to develop within a team.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think this is where you have these new coordinators in Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio being able to develop the talent. And I'm very, very intrigued to see how these guys run their systems with this talent. And I know the defense isn't as talented. They've got a lot of young players. They got a lot of youth. They do have some talent. Let's see what Vic Fangio can tap into with these guys. The Kellen Moore aspect, I am very, very excited to see what he can do.
I don't think people realize how good of a hire that is for this team.
You know what? The other
and
thing,
maybe they do, but I mean, it's tough because we go, oh, he was the Cowboys. Kellen Moore is one of those up and coming hotshot names. Like, he will be a head coach within the next 2 years. So if in those 2 years we can steal a Super Bowl because of it, let's do it.
Yeah, no, you're right there. Absolutely. And I think looking at what Kellen Moore does, it was funny. Like, when you saw on like all the social media platforms, the Eagles during the OTA, they show Saquon, and the first video is him doing, a screen pass. It's him rolling out and taking a screen pass and throwing to the running back. And, he just looks rejuvenated, basically. And I know he mentioned something about, you look around the huddle and you look at you have Devontae and you have AJ Brown and you have Jalen, you have all this talent, and, it's pick your poison. That's what it comes down to. It's a pick your poison type of offense. You want to stop the run? You want to load the box and stop the run? That's fine. We will pick you apart with the passing game. If you want to play deep, play play your safeties deep to cover the deep ball, make sure you're not, then we're going to run the ball on the lighter boxes. So it's going to be very interesting to see what defenses do to combat what Kellen Moore and Nick Sirianni and the Eagles offense wants to put out there. But I know it's only day one and stuff, but it's fun to see football starting to, get back. You're going to be into June already. I can't believe it's almost June already. But because you look at June and then all of a sudden you get into July and training camp's right around the corner. So you have some mini camps and then you have training camp around the corner and then basically preseason and the season starts. So it's coming fast. It's coming quick, but I'm very happy and I can't wait to see more and more of it. But before, I know it's not going to be a super long show, but before we head out, I do want to bring up this question because I think it's a fun type of conversation.
Okay.
And it has to do with basically you look at top 100 Eagles of all time. Now, everyone has their own criteria on what they think and everything.
Right. It's a judgment question.
It is a judgment question, but it's a fun judgment question because I'm going to be dropping the top 100 Eagles of all time. So there was a couple things that I posted. One today that I posted was, is Mike Vick a top 100 Eagle of all time? Because if you say yes, then you can't say no to a player like Carson Wentz. When you take a look at top 100 Eagles of all time, and you have to go back in the history. You can't just say, from 1975 onward, because that's not really fair. That's not the history. So there's a couple players that I happen to somehow forget that I had to adjust the list. And, you take a look at what I posted today, the Mike Vick, Carson Wentz type of question here, because you look at Eagles of all time. How many Eagles quarterbacks would you put in the top 100?
McNabb.
It isn't many, but McNabb is definitely yes.
I don't put Foles.
All right, you have to put Foles.
No, I'm sorry, not Foles. Foles is towards the bottom. I mean, he won a Super Bowl for the team.
But he's still top 100 Eagle of all time.
Yes,
you can't discredit his 27-2 season. You can't discredit the playoffs, what he did, the 2018 season, the end of that season. He had a couple of pretty good runs. So.
I did not mean Foles. Kevin Cobb is not on the top 100. No. Jaworski is in the top 100.
There isn't many. You probably can count them all. I would say maybe on one hand. I'm trying to think what I did. Yeah, I think so.
I think for me, if I had to choose between Vic and Wentz, I go with Wentz.
So Vic,
because while his time was short here, it was elite. Vic is known for rejuvenating his career here, but he didn't do it at the same level that he had been doing it in Atlanta. 2010
was Vic's best season. Of course, we know that everything because he came in 2009. McNabb was still starting. He had a couple, he played a few games here. He would just come in as like extra quarterback, coming in, run the option, whatever it is. 2010, of course, he takes over for Cobb, who gets concussed in the first game against the Packers and has a heck of a season. Brings them to the playoffs. Unfortunately, they lose in the wild card to the Green Bay Packers. 2011 and 2012, he goes through injuries. 2013, he starts off pretty good, and then he gets hurt, and then Foles takes over, and of course, you have the 27-2 season with Foles there. But McNabb, Randall's in there.
Oh yeah, obviously Randall.
You have Jaws. You have Foles. I put Jalen in there because he brought you to a Super Bowl. If you take a look at what he has done, not many Eagles quarterbacks have done what he's done, running the ball, passing the ball, touchdowns. He's done a hell of a job for what
I think as his career goes on, he will climb the scale. I think, he's not crazy high up yet.
Yeah, he's definitely going to climb the scale there, but I only have 5 and it poses that question because Mike Vick as a starter was 20-20. And yeah, he had 57
And that's kind of my
passing,
point.
and 57 passing touchdowns. I think he
Great.
had 13 rushing touchdowns, I believe. But, Wentz was 30, I think 35 and 32 and 1. Not great numbers. He had that MVP season in 2017 because if he never gets hurt, he's the MVP and Brady's not.
And he's still the quarterback of this team.
Yeah, it would be. It's a very fun what if question. There's a lot of that in the Eagles' history, and something that I may want to dive into when we start to get slow in the June period and everything like that. I think that'd be very fun to kind of, talk about because there's so much of that to discuss. And he said, my thing was you want to. A lot of people look at a player and they go just by the name. You can't just put Mike Vick in because of the name. Yes, he is an all-world talent and NFL football player that did things that nobody saw a quarterback do before. Now, Randall was kind of like that, but Vic was a little different. But Vic in Atlanta is a top Atlanta Falcon.
He is a top 10, maybe a top 5 Falcon of all time.
Yeah, but he's not a top Eagle. And I think that some people get that mixed a little bit when you look at top 100. Like, I know you can go off names and go, well, he's not, but the production has to be there. Like a player like Terrell Owens is a top 100 Eagle because the production is there. So,
and again, the Eagles don't get to a Super Bowl without him.
No doubt. And so it's a fun thing and something that we will be dropping very soon. So keep an eye out for that. It'll be like a little series. So definitely check that out. But it was just a fun conversation. I like posting, some of that stuff. Like I posted 2 days ago, I posted about, after Devontae Parker retired, I posted, should the Eagles sign Michael Thomas?
There's some names out there. I don't think I would go Michael Thomas.
It got a ton of comments. A lot of people, the majority was no. The majority was, he hasn't played much in the past couple of years. He's 31, I believe. And they're like, I don't want another Julio Jones experiment. And
Julio Jones was fine for what he was, but he was filling a spot. I would rather just add, or I'd rather let these guys develop and get the reps.
We'll see. Listen, we'll see if these guys in camp don't look that great. And, Kellen Moore says, I need a third receiver. I need another receiver. I need another outside guy.
Get one.
And we'll see. Maybe they'll go get one. Maybe they'll trade for a player who is at the back end of a roster spot that's not going to make a team. Maybe they could do a deal there. But it's going to be interesting. And I like throwing those type of scenarios out there for everyone to comment on and kind of see what people are thinking. You get some people arguing with each other in the comments, and it isn't like a clickbait type of thing. It's a general question. What are people's thoughts? What do they think? And I've been doing it with some of the positions, and we're going to get into that in maybe another week or two, going over the Eagles roster, seeing what their depth's like, seeing what they have in terms of where they could still add somebody, where a veteran maybe could be needed, where you think that they're thin, where do they need to potentially keep an eye out for a player who is released in camp or a player they can get a trade for or whatever it may be. I like to throw that out there to see what everybody is thinking because everyone has different opinions and they're welcome to voice their opinions, not saying that I agree with it or you agree with it, but everyone has the right and are entitled to their opinion. So, whatever it may be, we're going to let you post on there, but
that's what's fun about this whole thing.
Yeah, because listen, I'll tell you this right now, the top 100 Eagles is going to get a lot of people are going to probably be upset with some of the players and where they're at, but
a lot of recency bias definitely is going to come into play.
That's just where, that's just what it is. Like people are going to be upset no matter what you post. You cannot please everybody. There's going to be somebody pissed off. And if that's the way you need to go about everything that you do. You're not going to please everybody. Put out what you feel. And, it may not be 2024ish to say that. Say how you feel. I guess it depends on what you're talking about. Now,
Sure.
I'm talking about sports takes.
Yeah.
Say how you feel, not talking about anything else. But everyone has their opinion. You may not agree with it, but that's what sports conversation and what this is all about. We're talking about the Eagles. We're talking about certain things. You and I are going to have disagreements when we talk about the top 100. You and I are going to have disagreements when we talk about the Eagles roster and what players we think are going to stay on the team, what players we think are going to be cut. We're not going to agree 100%, but we're going to talk to each other, and you're going to give your reasoning for something. I'm going to give my reasoning for something. So again, that's what this is about. And that's what I'm excited to see when
it'll be cool.
the lists start to drop and we start to see, some of the comments coming through and what people think about the list and, where they see certain players and, who they may have forgotten about,
who we don't rank too high enough.
Yeah. So it's definitely going to be, fun, but, like I said, just a short episode tonight, nothing too drastic. I wanted to get on, talk a little bit about, since OTAs just started up, media was just allowed, this afternoon. So, I think it's today, tomorrow, and then I think there's a break and it goes all the way up until the end of next week. So there's some breaks in between that, but they're going to be practicing everything for the next week too. So we'll see what comes of next week. Potentially have a guest coming on to talk some Eagles football. So
it's cool.
We'll keep everybody in the loop on that. Make sure you're following, make sure you're subscribing. We appreciate all the comments. We appreciate everyone that's watching, tuning in. Just make sure everything is down at the bottom there. Make sure you hit the subscribe or the follow button on all those platforms, and you'll get all our latest news, notes, everything we're doing, what we're posting, comment in, give us your opinion, give us your feed. We always are welcome to that. But with that, the way we always end it, Chip. Go Birds.
Ring the bell, go Birds.
This is Matt Ware. Hey, for all the Eagle content you need, go follow All About the Birds. They do a damn thing. Check them out.
Hey, Eagles fans, I may be in Tampa, but I know where to find the best Eagles content out there. Check out my friends at All About the Birds.
Philadelphia, what's up? This your boy Freddie Mitchell, a.k.a. Fred X. It's all about the bird.
All birds all the time. All birds all the time.
All About the Birds provides you with weekly analysis, game recaps, informative interviews, and it's all birds all the time.